How to Get What You Want Every Time. Written by William Hunter and published by Audiobooks Haven. Negotiation isn't about splitting things 50/50ths or insisting on your way or my way. It's certainly not about winning or losing. If you're asking who is winning, you've already lost. So, what is negotiation really about? Let me give you a few examples to illustrate. Two men argue in a library. One wants the window open for fresh air, while the other wants it closed to prevent his papers from blowing. What do? Do you leave it half open or half closed? The librarian listens to both, and then opens a window in another room, bringing in fresh air without disturbing the papers. This solution leaves both sides satisfied. Another example. Two people want to share a cake, but can't agree on how to divide it fairly. No matter how it's cut, each will complain that the other side got a bigger piece. So, what do? You ask one person to cut the cake, and the other to choose first. Knowing that the other person picks first, the one cutting will divide it evenly to avoid getting the smaller portion. One last example. Two kids argue over an orange. The parent cuts it in half, giving each kid 50%. One child eats the fruit and throws away the peel, while the other uses the peel for baking and discards the fruit. If the parent had asked why they wanted the orange, both kids could have received 100% of what they wanted, but instead they only got half. As you can see from these examples, negotiation is about finding a solution that satisfies both parties without damaging the relationship. But how do you do that? How do you find wise and practical solutions like the ones we just saw? Here's a 4-step framework to help you become an effective negotiator. Step 1. Focus on interests, not positions. Think about the story of the two men arguing over the window in the library. It shows a common issue in negotiations. People focus too much on their positions. Instead of arguing about positions, shift your focus to interests. The benefits of focusing on interests are clear, but it can be challenging because positions are specific, while interests may be hidden or unclear. So how do you uncover the interests of the other side? Simply ask, why? Try to understand their perspective. Once you discover their underlying interests, discuss them openly. People are more receptive when they feel understood. They often see those who understand them as smart and considerate. If you want them to listen to your interests, start by showing that you care about theirs. Of course, you also need to communicate your own interests clearly. The other side may not know them. To turn your interests into concrete options, ask yourself, if they agree with me tomorrow, what do I want them to do? Step 2. Use fair standards. Even if you understand what the other side wants, conflicts will arise. You may want lower rent while your landlord wants it higher. Instead of arguing back and forth, use objective criteria to reach a decision. Remember the cake example, where one person cut the cake and the other chose first. This method is based on a fair standard. Objective criteria are unbiased and independent of personal opinions. Examples include market prices, legal requirements, expert opinions, or mutually agreed upon standards. In negotiations, people often resist agreeing because they feel you're imposing demands. But if you say, let's check the rules or regulations, it shifts the focus from your desires to what the rules indicate. It's no longer you making the demand, it's the standard. For instance, if your house construction contract doesn't specify the depth of the foundations, and the contractor suggests 2 feet, while you think 5 feet is the standard, don't just compromise. Instead say, maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps 2 feet is enough. Does the government have standard specifications for these soil conditions? What's the earthquake risk here? Where do you suggest we look for standards to resolve this question? To apply this principle effectively, establish some fair standards with the other party before you start negotiating. For example, say, you want a high price, and I want a low one. Let's figure out what a fair price would be. What standards should we use? By focusing on fair standards, you can turn conflicting interests into a shared goal. Step 3. Invent options for mutual gain. Think back to the example of the kids fighting over the orange. Instead of splitting it 50/50ths, they could have found a way for both to get 100% of what they wanted. This scenario emphasizes the importance of creating options for mutual gain in negotiations. So, how do you come up with creative solutions? Here's how. Gather your team, or the other side, and brainstorm all possible solutions. Let the ideas flow freely. Don't judge or select any ideas in the initial phase. Separate the brainstorming session from the decision-making session. When brainstorming, choose a few participants, change the environment, and create an informal atmosphere with a clear purpose. After brainstorming, start with the most promising ideas and discuss ways to refine them. People often assume that differences in negotiation create problems, but these differences can actually lead to solutions. Recall the example of the orange. A wise solution was possible because each side wanted different parts of the orange. It's misguided to think that differences cause the problem. In reality, differences can lead to creative solutions. Step 4. Separate the people from the problem. Before beginning a negotiation, visualize a vertical line dividing a person in two. One side represents the person, and the other represents the problem. Always prioritize the person over the problem. Negotiators are people first, and your goal should be to be soft on the person but firm on the problem. Often, when we're soft on the person, we also become soft on the problem, leading to unfavorable outcomes. Alternatively, being firm on the problem can make us harsh on the person, damaging the relationship. Be soft on the person. Compliment when you can and appreciate their effort at every stage of negotiation. Ask yourself, am I paying enough attention to the people aspect? People have different viewpoints, and their egos can be easily threatened. They often view the world through their own perspective, confusing their perceptions with reality, and may misinterpret your words or fail to express their true intentions. Remember, you need to address not only their concerns but also your own. Your anger and frustration can obstruct an agreement, and your perspective may be one-sided, preventing effective communication. One of the best ways to prevent issues with people is to build a relationship before negotiations begin. Negotiating with someone you know is easier than with a stranger. Arrive early to chat, and stay a bit afterward to get to know their likes and dislikes. These informal interactions can make future negotiations much smoother. Multiple studies show that simply getting to know the other side can increase the success rate by 25 to 30%. Now you might think, these 4 steps sound fair, but what if the other side doesn't play by the rules? What if they use dirty tactics, have more power, or attack me personally? Here's how to handle each of these situations. Dealing with dirty tactics. People may lie and use pressure tactics. Recognizing these tricks often neutralizes them. Mention it directly. For example, Joe, it seems like you and Ted are playing good cop and bad cop. If you need a break to a line, just ask. Pointing out the tactic makes it less effective and may cause the other side to worry about losing you. Simply raising the issue can be enough to stop it. However, avoid personal attacks. Focus on the problem, not the person. Instead of saying, "You put me in front of the sun deliberately," try, "The sun in my eyes is distracting. Can we adjust the schedule and meet later? I can't concentrate like this." When the other side has more power. If the other side is more powerful, don't turn the negotiation into a showdown. The best strategy is to develop your BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Think about how you'd feel walking into a job interview with no other offers. The salary negotiation would be difficult. Now, contrast that with how you'd feel walking in with 2 other job offers. The difference is power. The easier it is for you to walk away from a negotiation, the greater your leverage. Developing your BATNA helps you determine the minimum acceptable agreement and often raises that minimum. Always establish your BATNA before negotiating. Don't say, "Let's negotiate first and see what happens." Without a BATNA, you're negotiating blindly. Handling personal attacks. If the other side attacks you instead of addressing the issue, things can become challenging. You want a fair solution, but they tear down your ideas. It's natural to defend yourself, but this leads nowhere. You push, and they push back, leaving you stuck. So, what do? Use negotiation jujitsu to sidestep their attacks. One approach is to look behind their position. When they state what they want, don't just respond with yes or no. Ask why they want it. Understand what is truly important to them. Second, if they reject everything you propose, ask for their advice. For example, say, "If you were in my position, what would you do?" This encourages them to put themselves in your shoes and offer solutions. Third, invite criticism instead of defending your ideas. Ask them, "What do you think is wrong with this approach?" This will help you understand their interests better. I'd like to conclude with a story that illustrates the true nature of negotiation. In 1964, an American father and his 12-year-old son were playing frisbee in Hyde Park, London. At that time, few people in England had seen a frisbee before, so a small crowd gathered. After a while, a man approached and asked, "Sorry to bother you. I've been watching for 15 minutes. Who's winning?" In negotiations, asking who's winning is like asking the same in a marriage. If you're focused on winning, you've missed the point. The real goal is working together to find a solution that satisfies both parties' interests. Thanks for listening to this from Audiobooks Haven.